Well, hello there, humans, bees, earthlings, whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, and whoever you're lucky enough to be doing it to. I'm Bushka on Blitz, and I just wanted to take a quick second to do a little bit of housekeeping here. If you're new to the channel, there's lots of stuff going on. Lots of reviews, lots of viewer interaction, lots of brand new stuff. But I just wanted to say how happy I am with the kickoff to 2018 and how good the new content style and everything is going. Like I ran up a drain pipe. Basically, the YouTube community tab has revolutionized the way I'm presenting videos. It's giving me the opportunity to let you guys have a real say, a real choice in the selection of content and what's coming up. And it's been reflected in the numbers that we're getting on the videos and the live streams and such. I mean, we had over 500 people on our first full line live stream the other day. So things are going swimmingly. So make sure you check out the webpage as well. I've revamped bushkaonblitz.com. So if you've got any ideas or thoughts on the new webpage, go and check that out and follow me on Twitter at bushkaonblitz. Now back to the video itself. Oh, don't adjust your iPad. That's me, not you. This is the Tortoise. Now, once upon a time, way back in the day when dinosaurs roamed the earth, this thing was the Mac Daddy. It was the OG, and I stat padded my absolute buttocks right down to the bones in this tank. How much? I played, let's have a look, 565 games in the Tortoise at 76.64% and 2,624 average damage, which is an awful lot. And I've actually played a huge amount of non-turreted TD games in Blitz. Probably about, I don't know, 15,000 games, 20,000 games in non-turreted TDs. I mean, I've got over 1,000 games in the E3 and 900 games in the T95. Like, it's a horrible, horrible statistic. The Tortoise was the king of kings because it had an amazing gun, it had massive amounts of penetration, it had fairly good armour for its time, and it wasn't dealing with a lot of very, very fast-moving tanks in the way we do now. And it's definitely come back to the field a bit. It's not as strong as it used to be, but it is very, very underrated. Now, I'm going to go through something here that a lot of people don't understand about this tank, and one of the reasons why it can be effective. It's got two characteristics of its gun. It's got huge gun depression, which is one really important thing, and it's got equally massive gun traverse. Well, in fact, more. It's got 20 degrees of traverse either side in the gun and 10 degrees down. And that means you can do this with the Tortoise, which for some reason, a lot of people tend not to do. You can shoot it over hills, which increases your armor profile. You can angle it as you're going over the hill. So you're going over like that, rather than going on dead straight, where you've got 228 millimeters of armor on your front, which is just weak. And I don't understand why people insist on driving it straight forward and never angling it and using the massive, massive gun traverse. 20 degrees either side is double the next best for a tier 10 TD, like the Jagdtiger. So you've got this amazing gun traverse, and then you have an amazing gun. The gun itself brings a whole lot to the table. But what you want to be doing is getting it on a corner or at least firing, and then you'll see in all the videos where I fire the gun and I swing it really hard around and make the front of the tank a very, very steep and hard to pen area. Now, that does not negate the fact it's got a huge, huge weak spot on top. You can see there at the left of screen, there is an area that has 170 to 102 to 101 millimeters of armor on the hatch, but you can make a living with this. You can particularly make a living against lower tier tanks. Lower tier heavies, there is none finer at just basically burning them to the ground. I'll show you an example of that here. And look how, as I come in, look at the angle on my Tortoise. Look at the angle. I'm not driving it straight. I'm just not giving the guy a straight shot until I get the gun back, and then I'm moving it and turning it around, and he doesn't have the pen to easily go through the front. And the gun on the Tortoise is phenomenal. The DPM is raw, hot diggity dog, and it's one of the reasons why you can do things like this to little unsuspecting IS-5s and the like. Now, that certainly doesn't count when you're dealing with big dogs like T110E5s and even same tier heavies like the M103. You've got to be a lot more careful with it, and that's exactly what I'm going to show you here. This is where there's an E100 in front of me. I know there are tanks there, so I'm not going to drive out like an idiot. You'll also note that when I do this, basically look at how fast and how far I angle back. Like, it's the same thing if you've watched any videos on the Foch or the T25 AT. And look at that gun traverse. Look at the angle I'm at while still putting that shot in. And guess what? My hatch is behind that wall. Like, it's an obvious thing. But people don't do it. And then they blame the tank because it doesn't have good armour. And I don't find that to be the case at all. The other thing that people don't really understand about with this tank is you've got Hesh. Now, it's not godly FV215B Hesh by any way, shape or form, but it is 120 millimeters of Hesh pen on a 515 alpha damage shell, which is a lot. And the reason I mention it specifically is that if you can use Hesh on a target, your DPM goes from a whopping 3,700 to 4,750, which is a lot of DPM. Like, you will melt stuff with this tank. What it allows you to do, if you're clever, and I mean, look at this, I'm angled up, I'm behind a tree, I'm going to miss the shot anyway because I'm an idiot, but for all that, I'm using the terrain around, and you can see I'm putting my hatch in the right-hand side there so that it's hidden and it's a lot safer. And look at how quick this thing reloads and how deadly effective it is at clearing targets. If you are looking for a tank that is nimble, this is not the tank. It really isn't. But if you're looking for a gun that you can get down to 0.284 dispersion, and there's that Hesh I was talking about, I'm currently looking at that grill with nearly 5,000 DPM, and there is a reason that he is just disappearing into the... Like, look how quickly this thing reloads. Thank you. It just spews out damage. It's got weaknesses. If it didn't have weaknesses, it would be completely broken. And it's not the broken tank it was previously. They have nerfed it a little bit. And they nerfed it because there was idiots like me running around in it just destroying Tier 9. It was horrible. Snake Eyes and I used to run a couple of these things at the same time, and it would just eat everyone alive. You're going to see, as soon as I start pulling back, what do? We angle. Look at the gun. The gun is pointing forward while I'm completely angled up here. I'm trying to minimize the time that people have on my very, very weak upper glacis and hatch. And I'm capable of doing that because I've set myself up very, very nicely here. And I've got team support. The thing this doesn't do really well is if you sit and spawn, you're wasting your time with this tank. It's like a T95. It only has a very, very slow top speed, but it does have, with all the bells and whistles, all the spare parts spent on it, 36.23 degrees of traverse, which is a lot better than it used to have. It really did suffer with that. What it doesn't have, though, is speed. Like, it's just a slow tank, and that puts a lot of people off. You can only get up to 20 kilometers an hour in the Tortoise, and that is a very, very slow tank. And make no bones about it, if you come up against an experienced driver who doesn't want to sit there and hit point trade with you because he knows he will get absolutely smashed in a hit point trade, it can be tedious and it can be tough. It's much better, in my opinion, in my humble opinion, than any of the other AT lines that you drive up to get here. But it is very much the same playstyle. It just takes it to a whole new level. The 120mm AT gun L1A1 is what makes the tank work. Without that gun, it would be a very poor imitation AT-15 or AT-7 or something along those lines. But for all that, I mean, I don't think it's a hard tank to drive. You can see I've got to the corner here and I've gone no further. A little bit of self-control and thought will go a long bloody way in this tank. And every time I take a shot, which is incredibly quickly when you're running adrenaline, like 5.5 seconds for an adrenaline, and look at this thing go. Look at the damage spit out of the mouth. I angle. I just angle. 6.6 seconds between shots. Like, even when I'm driving up here, look at the angle I'm at, and people just don't bloody well do it. And I don't understand why. If you angle, you will bounce a lot of shots in the Tortoise, and look at the gun work. I'm running this thing on NA at the moment, and it's no different to it was before. I've only played 21 games on NA with it, but it's running at 2,500 average damage and 80%, and it's pretty much all solo. It's just me running around doing this. It was one of the easiest tanks to get numbers, to get videos for on the review, because I've not had to change my playstyle in this tank for such a long time. I'm just trying to stay away from that IS-7, and again, straight into our angle, up behind the tank in front of me. Bob's your mother's brother. Everyone loves a winner. Look how quickly it fires. One of the reasons too, which we don't really understand, or a lot of people don't understand when you're playing it, if you have a gun that has a very wide traverse, you're going to see on a lot of the shots I take with the Tortoise, if you have a gun with a very wide traverse, it means the aiming reticle stays quite small because you don't have to move the tracks as much. And when you don't have to move the tracks as much, your aiming reticle doesn't go zooming through the roof. And the aim time on the tank is bloody gorgeous. 3.5 seconds when you're fully buffed up. So you've got 3.5 seconds of aim time, 0.284 dispersion. You have 3,700 DPM. Like, if you don't like DPM, then you're doing it wrong. The Ag Tiger's the most in game, 3,996. You've got 3,700. Like, you're 300 behind the Ag, which it's not perfect, but I think it's a far more durable tank than the Ag Tiger. You know what? During the course of this review, I was driving it and people were asking, why are you in the Tortoise? It's hated. People don't like the tank. People think it's a bad tank. And it baffles me. And this is the perfect game for this tank. I'll make no bones about it. This, you've seen, I played it in tier 10 games and done fine in it. That's not a problem. Like the last two games before this were both tier 10 games. But look at the matchmaking. Tier 9 tank with everything else being tier 8. This is the perfect storm for the Tort. What it means is I can bounce a lot of shots and I can out DPM absolutely everyone else in the game apart from their Tortoise. So I'm going to make use of the gun depression, 10 degrees of gun depression, which is pretty important. 10 degrees of gun depression and that huge gun traverse, 20 degrees either side, which is obscene, really obscene, like really, really obscene. I'm going to make use of those numbers. Can I just say one more time, every time I come around a corner in this thing, that guy's standing straight on. When I come around this corner, look at the way I'm angling this tank. Anyone that's shooting at me is getting nothing but angle. And I'm able to angle that severely because I'm on a hill, right? So I'm on a hill. And that hill allows me to increase my armor profile. It's the same thing people don't get about a tank like the FV4202. Now, I'm not saying the 4202 is going to bounce thousands of shots, but you see really good players driving it and they play it on steep angles and steep hills like this. And the armor profile jumps up in effectiveness by a huge amount, an absolutely huge amount. And this is a lovely spot for this tank. I've got houses on the right, I've got soft cover there, I'm angled, I'm in a really good position. The only thing that I don't have going for me here is my mobility. The Tortoise struggles tremendously with mobility, and you can see I'm trying to keep that angle there. I get my turret behind the house, so I'm actually firing around the corner. And I don't know, this lurver is basically stopping me from doing anything, and he's going to die. It's unfortunate, and I'm trying to give him space, but he's coming out sideways. He's showing his drive wheel. Yeah, can't help him, and he's now just in the way, which is really unfortunate. But there you go. You get that on the big jobs. So let's talk a little bit more about the issues the Tortoise has, and I'm going to stop this right here while I show you. And we will get back to that game. But this is finishing out a game on Fort Despair. Now, there's a Tort there, and I'm in the Leopard 1, and this is where the Tortoise is absolutely hopeless. Absolutely hopeless. The lack of mobility, if you are not fully buffed out, and the incredible aversion to fast tanks is obvious. Now, I'll show you this in slow-mo again because I want to talk through this, and this is very important to understand. half the battle with this tank is preparation and putting yourself in a good position. It's a lot like driving a hull down tank like the Chieftain or the Carnarvon. You move from one good spot to the next. You don't get caught out in the open. You don't get caught in positions where people can get round you. And the Tortoise's weak point is on the right-hand side of the tank. So what I'm going to do here is basically on the move, just nudge up my aiming reticle and hit him dead set in the middle of that weak point. You can see there, because that's visible. And as he drops back, I am then able to simply go around him. Now, if you were in this tank, you'd want to have the gun aimed at me, but the tank severely angled up, so it wasn't so easy for me to get into that hatch area, and then you could turn into the wall and I wouldn't be able to get behind him. But that's just a minor error, but that is amplified tremendously because the tank's mobility is so poor. So I can understand why people who drive it and don't move it from strong position to strong position, or don't have the support, and admittedly this guy, he just didn't have any support, there was no one left, could find it to be a very frustrating tank, because this is something that makes you want to eat your iPad. But for all of that, the tank can also do things like the game I'm currently playing on Vineyards, which we'll get back to now. Now, I love the Tort. I've got a lot of time for it and I really enjoy driving it. It's by no means a tournament style tank. There's just no way around it. It's not. But what it is a tank for people that are patient. I'm in a great spot here. I'm not particularly worried, despite the fact that we're like 3 on 6 and now 3 on 5, because I've lost not many hit points. I've got the best gun in the game, and they have to come at me, bro, literally, which is great. And tanks like that Mod 1, they don't have the accuracy or the ability to really put a lot into this Tort. That bounce there, I mean, look at the angle that guy's coming at it. I've probably hit him on the upper glacis or something, and it's just at an auto bounce, or I've hit him on the end of the gun or something like that. Either way, it's probably caused by the fact that he was using the slope. Now, remember that game with the Leo just now where I showed you some of the weak points for the Tort? Look how close I am to this house. Anyone that wants to come and have a crack at me is going to have to do so through the house or not at all. And I've built myself a little fort up here, and I'm basically just angling the tank up massively and using the tremendously big gun traverse. I keep saying it. People keep wondering why I'm saying it. It's because it's important to say. And now I'm going to push around and use the lever there to keep my flank safe, pump one into this Pershing, and now we're actually looking like we're going to win it, which is all well and good. I would like to think that this helps people not just with the Tortoise, but with the AT-7, the AT-15, the AT-15A, all those tanks which, for lack of a better term, are criminally underrated. They have an awful lot going for them. They have armour and they have good guns, but they have these huge weak points. If you get in the habit of just approaching everything at an angle on top of a hill and sticking stuff to your right and your left, you'll do a lot better in them. Like, you'll just do a lot better in them. I'm actually doing a video series at the moment on 5 tanks people like to drive the least in Blitz. And a lot of the people came up in the community settings in the community tab and basically said anything in the AT line apart from the AT2. That was like, people were saying that ad nauseum. But I just don't feel like I can put that in, because I feel like those tanks, for whatever, they still have good guns. The Tortoise is not good in situations that are fluid and in positions where you are alone on a flank. Unless you've got a lot of cover and just a perfect spot where you're hiding your weak point, you can be exploited. And it gets tough throughout this line when you run into a lot of fast-moving lights and mediums. So you've got to really pay close attention to your team and try and use them as your support system. Not just saying you're a backline tank, but you're also able to get forward, but you're doing it with people around you or people to your right or your left so that you're not going to get stuck and flanked. Because once you're flanked in the Tort, you're dead. It's massive. It's huge. I've stood next to one of these things in real life, and it is an enormous, enormous vehicle. Anyway, I'm Bushka on Blitz. Love your work. Thank you so much for sticking around and being part of the channel in 2018. Remember to go and check out the new webpage, bushkaonblitz.com, and please follow along on Twitter at Bushka on Blitz or on Facebook, Bushka on Blitz. Rock on, humans. And until next time, oh, I forgot. I'm relaunching Bushka on Boats. I'm going to be using that for my World of Warships Blitz just because the tank channel is so busy. I can't afford to put more content on here. It would just muddy the waters too much, no pun intended. So check that out. Until next time, look after yourselves and stay safe on the battlefield.